The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
And welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Connor. This is your first time here. I am really glad you found your way in, and I hope you stay a while. If you've been here before, well, welcome back. We have a lot to cover today. Today, I want to talk about a woman who people often misunderstand because of the way she moves through her world. It can be confusing to others that haven't gone through the things that she's gone through. It's the kind of rebuilding that she's done that no one really knows inside what's happening, but they judge her from outside. You have maybe heard the phrase floating around here on the internet or someplace that talks about the most dangerous woman. And the most dangerous woman you'll ever meet, the phrase says that she's the one that's healed alone. And when people hear that sentence, they usually imagine somebody who's hardened by life. They picture a woman who's built walls so high that no one can reach inside to grab her. She may not even be known to anyone anymore. She seems guarded or distanced. She's someone who's decided that the safest path forward is not meeting anyone at all. That image is dramatic to others. And it can often seem as though they're talking about a woman that may seem, arrogant or overly confident, when really what it is that they're seeing the steadiness in this woman. They're seeing that she's gone through the struggle and they're interpreting it as that she isn't loud about it and that she doesn't walk into rooms announcing that she has changed. They just can't figure out exactly what's happened to her. And many times those cases with the women like this, it's a shift that's quiet enough that people can't quite name it, or they just can't understand why she feels differently, why they're noticing that she no longer bends the way she used to bend. She no longer rushes to smooth everyone else's discomfort. And she no longer arranges herself around everybody else. She can stand comfortably within herself, and people may be uneasy with that. So instead, she stands inside her life in a way that seems calm and clear and is certainly grounded. And people often mistake that kind of calmness for distance. Sometimes they interpret it as intimidation. And occasionally, those women get labeled as arrogant. And what we actually are seeing is her self-trust. And that self-trust changes the way that women and this person moves, as we move when we have self-trust, as we move through life in the way that's difficult to explain to others until they've really lived their own process and lived their life through a different process. And let me tell you about somebody, Emily. She came to talk to me and she was great. But one of the first things you'll recognize in Emily when she first sat down across from me, she looked like somebody who had everything put together, holding everything in her life together. And for a very long time, from the outside, her life appeared to be stable. And many of things in her life were viewed from a distance as great, successful, competent. She had built a career she cared about. She had been in a relationship for over a decade. She had routines, responsibility, and the kind of daily structure that signaled stability. On paper, everything looked great and nothing looked broken. Yet the first thing Emily said to me during one of our sessions and our conversations that caught my attention was that she told me somewhere along the way, she felt as though she disappeared from her own life. She didn't say it in a dramatic way or even an emotional way. It was kind of flat in how she said it. She said it in the way that someone notices something quietly for the first time. And when she began explaining what she meant by being disappeared in her own life, a pattern slowly came into focus. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic or traumatic in what happened to her in her relationships, nothing explosive, no arguments, no betrayal, no shattering of everything or anything. Instead, it began years earlier. Small adjustments, small compromises, small moments where she reshaped herself ever so slightly. So everything around her would continue to run smoothly. And at first, those choices that she made felt reasonable. Being patient and flexible and accommodating are qualities that we all try to strive for, perhaps. And most of us were taught those and admired those in Emily and in ourselves. And Emily generally believed that what she was doing was right, that she was maintaining harmony. The difficulty with harmony in this case is that it was being maintained by losing her own voice. And eventually, it stops feeling like everything is in harmony. And peace that costs you your voice isn't peace at all. What many people discover after years of prioritizing others or stability over honesty is that losing themselves rarely happens in one dramatic fashion or moment or situation. Most of the time, it happens gradually through decisions seeming harmless when viewed individually. It happens when we swallow a comment that mattered to us, but we don't want to create tension. It happens when we adjust a plan that isn't exciting to us, but do it anyway because someone else wants us to. It happens when we silence our instinct, telling us that something isn't quite right, but yet we do it anyway. Each of those moments seems small over time and over months and maybe over years, they begin to accumulate. Emily gave me an example. One afternoon, she told me about a weekend several years into her relationship where she wanted to visit her sister. She hadn't been there in several months, and her sister and her had a great relationship, and they needed time to bond again. And her sister had been going through some difficult times, and Emily was looking forward to the trip. When she mentioned the plans to her partner, he didn't say no, he didn't object directly. He simply mentioned that he had been hoping they could spend the weekend together. He said he understood if she needed to go, but that he would miss her. Emily heard the words underneath and she recognized the mild disappointment as a signal that what she was choosing or had to choose was her sister over him, and that she was supposed to adjust to that. She felt the guilt that he was laying on her and the consequences that may come from that. And so, what did she do? She told her sister she couldn't visit that time, that she would have to wait. And she convinced herself it wasn't a big deal and that she could see her sister at any time and that her relationship at home was more important. Yet when she hung up the phone afterwards, talking to her sister, something inside of her felt slightly off. She ignored it. That moment didn't feel significant at the time. And it was just one weekend. What was the big deal, she thought? One adjustment, one small choice that was made in the name of keeping harmony at home, running things smoothly, and not having to choose the sister over the partner. What Emily didn't realize then was that she would be making those versions of that same choice 100 different times over the following years. She stopped mentioning the opportunities she had. She started mentioning the exciting things that she could do that required travel or evening away or other commitments or focusing on other people. Those things would disrupt the home routine. When friends visited her for dinner, her partner seemed unenthusiastic, maybe a little tone or a body language shift. She began declining invitations and she began staying home. There was a book club that she had wanted to join. She loved reading and had been thinking about it for months. But when she finally worked up the courage to mention it to her partner, the response was dismissive. He simply looked confused and asked, why would she want to spend Tuesday nights with strangers talking about books when they already had limited time together. She never brought it up again. These weren't controlling behaviors by the partner in any dramatic sense. They were no ultimatums, no shouting matches, no demands, just mild expressions of disappointment, mild layers of guilt, minor small suggestions, questions that framed concern, that shifted her thought around priorities. And each time, Emily absorbed these signals and adjusted accordingly. The pattern became ingrained. She stopped recognizing what she was doing. When a friend would suggest plans, Emily's first thought wasn't whether she wanted to go. Her first thought was whether it would create friction at home. That instinct became automatic. The what ifs. Emily described the experience in a way that stayed with me. She said it felt as though she had been stepping outside of herself a little at a time until one day she looked back and realized she wandered so much further away from herself that she didn't recognize herself anymore. She didn't have the bonds or the friends or the support group that she once had and needed because of the choices that she had made. Eventually, things happened. What surprised Emily the most was not the situation itself. It was her decision over time to compromise things that she loved, the book club, the visits with her sister, the friends, the support group that she had, the time away. Relationships that females have with other females is so critical and crucial as we move through life. Those are our soul sisters, and they understand exactly what we're going through, whether it's said or not said. And time with those people are just amazing and irreplaceable. But Emily replaced those things. And eventually, resentment built into her relationship. She realized that she was getting angry at situations with her partner not because of his choices, but because of hers. One evening, she was sitting alone when she recognized something was unsettling. She didn't know who she was anymore. And when people say that sentence, it can sound dramatic in a way that Emily said it wasn't dramatic. To me, it sounded calm and reflective. It sounded like someone acknowledging the truth was forming quietly over years, that she realized that the choices she was making by abandoning not only the groups and the friends and her sister, but what she was abandoning was herself. And that moment was the quiet recognition that she no longer recognized herself. And that's when the rebuilding begins. Rebuilding rarely starts with confidence or with empowerment. It begins with honesty. And honesty can feel uncomfortable because once you see the truth of your life clearly, you cannot return to the version of the story allowing you that you always ignored it. Emily spent months replaying the versions of the years in her mind, trying to identify when the shift had started. She kept thinking about all the decisions and all the moments, the weekends away that she didn't choose, the books that she didn't share openly with a group, the times, the dinners, the friends that she walked away from, the small decisions she had made without questioning it at the time. And what she eventually realized was something that many people discovered during these periods of reflection. Losing yourself rarely happens all at once. It happens through patterns developing over time. Once Emily began to recognize those patterns, she also realized something else, that if she slowly stepped away from herself through the years of small compromises, it meant she could slowly find her way back through a series of honest discussions and decisions with herself. The first step was rebuilding herself, was relearning how to listen again. When someone spends years adjusting their behavior to meet external relationships or patterns, expectations of others, their internal voice often becomes quiet. It doesn't disappear, it just goes really faint, like the hum. Faint enough that it becomes so easy to ignore. Emily began paying attention to her reactions during the everyday moments. She noticed which conversation energized her and which ones left her drained. She noticed when her body relaxed and when she felt tense. when her shoulders reared up. She started asking herself simple questions she hadn't asked in years. What do I want my life, my body, my heart, my mind to feel like? Not just what it should look like, not what people expect, but what it should feel like from the inside, what it should feel like for her. That question can be deceptive, be simple, and many people struggle to answer it because we're often taught to focus on life's visuals and outside optics, what things should look like rather than what they should feel. We're often told more about our image, our roles, than we are about our emotions. And that's not where we need to be. Emily didn't have clear answers. No one really does, right? And yet she immediately started asking the questions, and the answers started appearing. The way she approached everyday decisions, instead of automatically adjusting herself to meet someone else's expectations or avoid their disappointment, she began pausing enough to notice that what each situation felt like. Those pauses, those small, powerful pauses, did it. It stopped the reaction. It stopped the internal voice from taking over. The first time Emily said no to something or someone simply because she didn't want to do it, the response surprised her. The colleague and friend invited her to a happy hour. Emily's instinct was to say yes because she always said yes, even though she had lots of chores and laundry and things to do at work that she was behind on. But when she paused, she noticed she felt tired. She realized she wanted to go home, make dinner, do the things she needed to do for herself alone. And she said no. She expected pushback from the friend. She expected the person to make her feel guilty, to ask why, to pressure her. And she wasn't prepared for that prior to the pause. But at the pause, she realized that the colleague said, "No problem, enjoy your night, maybe next time." And that was it. Emily realized that she had been carrying years of an imagined consequence and never materialized in reality. The second time felt easier. Another friend asked her opinion on something, and Emily's instinct was to soften her response to find a more diplomatic middle ground of ensuring somebody that what their decision was okay and that no one felt uncomfortable about it. Instead, she paused, maybe put her hand on her heart, and asked herself what she actually thought. Then she said it, not rudely, not aggressively, just honestly. Her friend nodded and said, "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing." Emily had spent years twisting herself like a pretzel, like a yoga teacher, into shapes to avoid conflict. She was discovering that most of the time the conflict existed only in her thoughts, in her imagination. A few weeks later, something more difficult happened. Emily started going out again. She met somebody that she liked and she wanted to spend time with. They suggested that they go away together. And her immediate instinct was to say yes, to accommodate, to be flexible, to be easygoing. Then she stopped and realized she didn't want to spend an entire week with somebody that she had met, even though she liked them. And she certainly just didn't want to spend her Saturday evenings and all day Sundays with somebody when she had other things she wanted to do. So she told the person, she braced for the disappointment or the annoyance, and she said, that makes sense. Let's just spend Saturday together, not the whole weekend. And that was it. She had expressed her preference clearly and directly, and nothing bad happened. The partner or their person respected her situation, and they spent a great Saturday together. And honestly, it was the best thing for them, and the best thing for her was to be honest and honor her instincts, saying no when she needed to, speaking up honestly when she wanted to. And something, really something, was impressive. She started to rest, she started to breathe, and she started to pause. And then she felt steadier. She had become self-trusting in herself. And that self-trust grows exactly that way, quietly, consistently. It grows every time you listen to the small voice inside of you say something that matters. One morning, Emily stood in her kitchen making coffee, and she noticed a thought drifting through her mind. She realized she felt lighter. Nothing dramatic had changed in her life. It was just an ordinary day and an ordinary morning and an ordinary cup of coffee. That hadn't changed anything internally. But she had stopped carrying the invisible weight of trying to manage everyone else's efforts. For years, she'd been adjusting her reactions, softening her words, and reshaping her preferences so everything and everyone around her stayed calm. That moment, she stopped doing that. The weight of those decisions from the past began to lift. When someone stops abandoning themselves, like Emily did, their life begins. It begins rearranging itself for themselves. Conversations change, decisions become clearer, and energy returns. Clarity arrives. Emily eventually said something that captured her transformation perfectly. Several sessions later, she said to me, "For the first time in years, my life fits me." And it was such a beautiful statement that her life finally fit her. Think about that for the moment. It wasn't a perfect statement. It wasn't effortless. It just fits. And that's exactly what we're all striving for. There's a deep peace coming from living in a life that fits who you are. Rebuilding, not to make Emily's life perfect, it did what it was supposed to. It returned her to herself. And over time, Emily began discovering and rediscovering parts of herself she had pushed away during all those years, all those moments of decisions to not disappoint anybody, the constant readjustment. She started doing things that she liked, painting. She stopped the years of self indulgence. And she started really focusing on her health and being productive with the things that she wanted to do. She started spending her Sunday mornings quietly when no one was around. And she just faded into a life that fit her. And then she rose above it with new energy, new confidence, and new decision making skills. She took long walks, spent time outside, enjoyed her company, spent time with her sisters. No destination in mind, no agenda, just movement and space in places that fit her. She noted she started to make different choices in how she spent her time and who she spent it with. She stopped saying yes or no to social obligations that drained her energy. She didn't feel declining anything that didn't fit her was rude. She just started protecting herself and her time. That's all we have is our time and our energy that we have control of and who we give it to. So she realized it was important. She joined the book club. She thought about meeting them every Tuesday night with excitement. She generally loved it. It was her sacred time because the books were always so profound, and the people that shared the stories and the time while they were together was important to her. They had a bond, and she honored that choice. Small decisions became stacking up in ways that created a life that felt different for her. It fit her. She started doing things that she enjoyed. And that's what we should all strive for, doing a life that fits us. None of these choices were dramatic, yet together, the small choices create something significant. Emily, like all of us, rebuilt relationships, friendships, supportive groups. We allowed the distances that we had created through other decisions in the past to become closer. We allowed dependent people to stop being dependent on us. Instead of doing everything for them, we supported them doing things for themselves. Now that's a weight that's worth lifting off of our chest and off of our heads and hearts. So the vision of her staying small was never there. It was just a choice she was making. She also learned something important about solitude and being with herself. For years, she believed that being alone meant that she was a failure, that she wasn't sure who she was, and she wasn't sure whether she liked the person she was, certainly didn't like the person that she made compromises for others with. So she had to find time and peace with herself, as we all do. I think it's important that we find that peace, that solitude, that we're okay being alone and enjoying our own company. And it's the self trust that we have, that we know that anything that comes at us, good and or bad, because of our self trust and the solitude we create, the peace, we know we can handle. We know we have the tools and the ability and the capacity to handle anything that life throws at us because of the solitude, the peace, and the ability to be okay alone with our thoughts, with our heart, with our feelings. Loneliness is not something that we should be afraid of. It's something that we should embrace. Being alone and in peace creates time for us to think, creates time for us to be still. We can't make decisions when there's a lot of noise and a lot of stress and a lot of conflict. It's just not fair to the decisions, to the people around us, to try to force change and choice when things are loud. What we need to do is to ask for peace and find it within ourselves. And during that peace, maybe it's comes daily, certain peaceful activities that we choose, then it grows into weeks, then it grows into months. And during those months, rebuilding within peace, you can discover something beautiful and something different. Solitude can be peaceful. It is where growth happens. Yes, we all need to move out of our comfort zone in order to grow. That's where growth happens, right? We can't stay complacent and hide from change and grow, right? That's not what happens in our lives. We grow through change, but change doesn't have to be noisy. It doesn't have to be chaotic. It can be peaceful. It can be confident. It can be with solitude, with steady footing and a steady voice. And that's what Emily did. You know, she just spent time enjoying things by herself, creating peace, sunrises, sunsets, a good cup of coffee. Doesn't have to be expensive at all. And those things brought her peace. They made her feel calm. There was no pressure to perform. There was no need to manage anybody's expectations. When you're in peace and in solitude, doesn't mean you have to be alone. Solitude, I think people think, well, it's isolation and it's cold and it's confining within a certain space by yourself. I find solitude to be in peace with myself. It doesn't matter if the room is filled with 5 people or 500 people. If I can feel peaceful within myself and steady and have self trust, it doesn't matter who's around me, right? Things I can find things that are peaceful and find peace in things. That's a better way to say that, no matter who's around me or if no one's around me, right? And that's what it is. It's about being simply present. It's about finding things that we create a pause before the quiet feeling of things, the richness of them. Even when things may have felt empty prior, we look for things that bring us peace, happiness, joy, delight, all of the things. And we have to notice the small things. We have to notice the things that bring us and create peace for us and not get distracted by things that created, I don't know, chaos before or noise before. I use that term a lot with my clients. Try to turn down the volume on the noise because you can't think, right? You don't make decisions at a rock concert. I mean, it's just not. You're focused on what's happening and you're not supposed to be there to make decisions. When you make decisions, you should do them in a place of peace and self-trust. And the way you look for it is in simple ways. The way the light filters through the window or the trees or the sound of nature or footsteps or people around you, smells and scents of things, food and or people can bring you joy and peace. And more importantly, what we have to look for is peace within our own feelings and thoughts, right? We have to feel comfortable feeling our feelings. I have been a patient or a advocate of therapy for a long time, 30 years. And I used to repress my feelings, as we all did. And we were taught to do that, right? Don't cry. We'd hear from our family and our friends or boyfriends or partners through the years is it's okay. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't be upset. Well, I have to tell people that when I feel the feelings, tears or frustration or whatever, I usually tell them. I usually cry. I'm a quick crier. And it took me years to become that. It took me years to not repress those. And I have to warn people when I'm around that I'm going to feel my feelings. I paid a lot of money and spent a lot of time with my therapist over the years in order to do that. It's a cleansing experience. It doesn't mean that I have to do it for hours or days or even overly a lot of minutes, but I just feel my feelings. If I'm angry, which doesn't happen very often, you'll know about it because I want to talk about it. I want to process it. And if I'm sad, the same thing, I'm going to show you tears. So those are the things that I look for. That creates peace with me. I don't want to repress my feelings, and nor should anybody repress their feelings. That doesn't bring us peace or solitude or joy or happiness. It can bring us frustration or resentment or anger or even illness, repressing your feelings, right? The weight of the thoughts and feelings that we carry and we don't express can be really heavy. And they'll project and present themselves in other ways if we don't let them project and present themselves in ways that they should, right? They can make us sick. We can have a bellyache and a headache, and we can go through life just kind of miserable if we don't get things out. And I don't mean in a loud, abrasive way. I just mean in a calm manner with clarity, without interruption. And being in peace and with solitude doesn't mean that we're lonely. It doesn't mean that we're alone, certainly not. There's a difference between those two states. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing to be comfortable, self trust, and discover that you can be enough and that you are enough. And those are the things that we have to get to, that I help my clients, and I've done years of work with this, is that I help and I want everybody to realize that you are and we are enough. And Emily realized that through small things, through small decisions that she had made, by changing the way she made decisions, by re-engaging with groups and things that she loved to do. She was often afraid of being alone because she never learned how good her own company was, right? You have to be comfortable. It takes work. It's like any relationship. Any outside relationship, you have to put work into. You have to get to know the person, and you have to do that with yourself. You have to be comfortable talking to yourself, both internally and externally. I do a lot of it myself. I talk to myself in the car. I talk to my father up in heaven, and I as a guide. And those are things that I do in order to build self-trust. It's like my intuition or my instinct just comes out in my own voice when I'm driving or walking. And I always say, am I doing the right thing? Come on, daddy, tell me how I'm supposed to do this. Tell me how I'm supposed to handle this person or this situation or that decision. So silence can feel uncomfortable at first. And solitude doesn't have to be lonely. Now silence can feel like relief. Peace can be that moment of clarity. And we often have to pause. I do a lot of pausing. It's a new thing for me over the last several years. And when I do, sometimes I have to put my hand on my heart just to steady myself and to center myself. And that's a great technique, to just pause, because prior to pausing or doing the physical action of pausing with the hand on the heart, prior to doing that, I would react. I'd get triggered by something. I would try to convince somebody of something or try to bring the conversation to a different level, be it healthy or unhealthy. And I don't do that anymore. And that's powerful. Self-trust is powerful. Women, everybody, but especially women, because I'm talking to you, is we are so powerful when we do things for ourselves with self-trust, and we grow by knowing that we're comfortable with ourselves. That having company and being comfortable with our own company is so powerful. It becomes a choice that is necessary, and it changes the way we have other relationships. Once we're comfortable with a relationship with ourselves, it changes every relationship that we have. When we're confident in the decision making ability that we have within ourselves and listening to our own voice and our own intuition and our own feelings, man, we are powerful to bring those skills and qualities and coping mechanisms into another relationship, right? Those are what we need to do. Those are the things that we have to start with. And we start with ourselves. We start with being everything we want to be with ourselves, right? We don't need outside validation. We don't need outside praises. We don't need, it's certainly nice to have a compliment and we should accept those, but we don't have to seek them, right? And if we don't seek them, when they come, they're even more impactful and more appreciative. And when you choose someone else's feelings over your own, you lose that presence, that self-trust, that solitude. And so we have to bring it back to being quiet. And I don't mean a noise or a volume, but I mean quiet within ourselves so that we know that we can trust ourselves, that we know that being alone and being at peace and with solitude can shift everything. Connections chosen from a place of peace can bring freedom, can bring a whole different level with relationships and connections. And they don't have to come from social optics or images or roles. Choosing to be with somebody from a place of peace and solitude is so enlightening versus being with somebody because your parents or your family or social societies or you should be or people want you to be. That's so stifling and so shallow that we have to move away from those decisions and move away from trusting our own ability to satisfy our own needs. Of course, we want to have companionship. We want to have a partner. We want to have somebody that can satisfy some of our needs, and we need that, but not all of them. And so when we connect with somebody from a genuine place of self-trust, we can give ourselves and them the presence in our lives that they deserve. We don't give them the responsibility to make us happy, to fulfill our needs. That's too heavy of a burden for anybody to have, for us to give. That's not what relationships are about, is that someone should do something for you or create peace or happiness for you. You create it yourself, and you create it by not being afraid, by not being looking for outside validation and not thinking about other people's role in your life. You need to think about the role you have in your own life. And that's when the shift happens. That's when the quiet shift happens. It's what am I doing for myself today to make myself happy? How do I be present? How do I create peace? How do I create solitude within my own life today? And then I can show up better for others because I'm not placing responsibility onto them for my happiness, for my responsibilities, for my tasks, for my obligations. I'm not throwing my role as a parent or as a partner or as a coworker onto anybody else. That's not their job. It's my job. And I have to start with me first. And that's what's important. It's the behavioral shift of expecting things from ourselves that we tend to expect from others. And man, that is such a burden for them. And then we shouldn't carry that burden for ourselves. We shouldn't try to make our spouses happiness before ours, right? Or our partners or our kids or anybody. Sure, we can influence their happiness and their life and their moods during the days. We've talked about that in the past and how we can do that. But our job isn't to create constant joy in someone else's life. Our job is to create joy in our own life, and then it will spread. So we have to stop convincing ourselves that small compromise doesn't matter, because it does. We don't want to do it in a way that seems hurtful or, guarded, that we're pulling or withdrawing emotionally from somebody to have them take care of their own needs or to punish them. That is horrible. Pulling away from somebody emotionally is is just abandonment, and it creates a lot of long-term effects on people. And we have to recognize when someone does that, that's their own limitations and not anything that you're doing. It's their limitations and their emotional capacity or emotional immaturity. So we have to stop reshaping ourselves to fit into other people's lives. And as Emily said, we have to find a life that fits us. And we have to create a life that fits us. And someone's idea of who you should be, the role you need to play, or how you need to play it, more importantly, how you show up to them or for them or within a unit, a family unit or a workplace environment, those types of things. That's not their role to tell you how to be. That sounds so performative to me. It sounds like an act. It sounds like a play. And I mean it like that way, an act like a play, that we have to have a script from someone, or we have to move through a situation or through a room or relationship because of someone else's told us that's how we should. That's not how it should be. We should move through relationships and roles and careers and life the way we want to, honoring ourselves and our lives and the fit that we can create within our own life and be a part of that life that actually exists and exists in a true self-trusting manner rather than a performance. We're not designed as actors. Some of us are trained to be, but we're not designed as them. We're not designed to walk into a room to perform. We're designed to be human and to create a life that fits us, to be okay being with ourselves, alone, with solitude, and first with peace, finding that peace through our own little choices, through not compromising, by doing things that serve us, that creates happiness and joy. Again, I keep using that word. And some people in your life, as they see you make these changes, and as you don't do the consistent role you've done for days or years or even jobs, they may not stay in your life the way they used to. The relationship won't be the same. You're not the same. So, how can you expect the relationship to stay the same? Some people will leave, and you will discover that you can handle them leaving because you'll be staying, right? You'll be staying with yourself. And if someone doesn't choose to stay with you because you've changed, or because you're somebody different, or you're not following their rules, then you don't want them in your life if you have to be somebody besides who you are to fit in their role and their life and not your own. Sure, it may be painful and you may miss them, of course, the role and the situation, but you have to be comfortable, self trusting to know that you'll be okay with any decision and any thought and any situation that comes. You can handle it. We can handle hard things. Hard things are hard. That's why the word hard is there, right? But if we do them with peace, with a pause, and from a place of peace, we can do them well. And they can bring us so much joy, so much emotional comfort. And you'll realize that you'll have alignment with yourself. And that alignment can shift everything, every relationship, every day, every choice, every energy that you have, that alignment brings. You'll find steadiness and you'll find peace. And here's what you'll notice, that over the years, you don't have to be angry at yourself from the decisions you made. Those are just lessons. Those are just things that had to happen in order for you to be the person that you are today. That's what transformation is all about. It doesn't come with anger. So you have to stop bending for others. You have to stop meeting people's expectations before your own. You have to go through the struggle. That's part of the growth. But you don't have to go through it loud and with the volume on 10. You can go through it with understanding and clarity. And you can go through it with your own accommodations, with your own requests, and withdrawing some boundaries. And you'll see how people shift. You'll see the dynamic. You'll see how relationships, conflicts, and tension fall away. You'll see that people that you used to seek approval from and used to seek their opinions, those people you still care about. The decision and opinions, nope, not so much anymore. You don't need their opinions or their permission to do anything. What you need is your own. So what you have to do is decide to just find self-trust. And self-trust comes with, again, pausing, finding peace, staying with the peace, the solitude, building a relationship with ourselves first, so with yourself first. Finding quiet pauses in your car, in the shower, doing laundry, ironing your clothes, whatever it is, to find peace. If something critical comes up inside of you or from others, the loudest voice is the one internally, you can acknowledge it and say, I hear you, but I'm not going to listen to you today. No more. I've done enough of that. Think of it as you're caring for the little girl that you were when you were a child, that you always wanted for someone to take care of them in the way that you needed to. But your parents or your siblings or your teachers or your partners or whoever at that time didn't have the skills, and neither do you, or did you, but now you do. And now you're learning new skills. You're learning to set boundaries, know your own preferences, be centered within yourself. You'll know that things aren't negotiable. You'll be comfortable where you are, and you'll see a significant shift and a significant difference. Being self-confident and self-trusting is amazing. And a woman who knows herself can still be kind. She can still be generous. She can still stand up for the people that she cares about. More importantly, she can stand up for herself. And the difference is that she shows up honestly rather than performatively with a version of herself that she thinks she wants to fit into her life versus what she used to think people wanted her to fit into their lives. And that honesty changes the dynamic. And you need to start with boundaries and with the silence and with the pauses and the lack of triggers. So we have to appreciate the clarity. We have to appreciate people's struggles, embrace those, embrace people, be kind, generous, caring, compassionate, a great listener. Not always an active listener. Those are differences as well, and we'll talk about that sometime. So what you really need to do is know that you can do this. You start with yourself. You want to be here to take care of yourself, to find a life that fits you, and that you, more importantly, fit into your own life. And so that's what the pauses happen. You don't try to convince somebody or let them convince you of anything. You pause, you take a deep breath, and you know that you can do this. We all can do this. You have the skills and the ability to stop the noise, turn down the volume. You can't make decisions when there is noise around you. It's not healthy, it's not beneficial, and it's not productive. When self-trust comes in with peace and solitude, you are powerful. You can get there every single day with small changes. Pause. Pause before you react to something. Pause. Take a deep breath. Pause. Feel your feelings. That's what's important. I want to thank you for coming up today. This is a powerful session today and podcast for you to listen to. I hope you share it with others. I hope you can find me on my website at chasingpurpose.com. We can schedule a session together. I have great clients and I've helped them, and I'm sure I can help you too. So stop adjusting for other people. Adjust for yourself. Find a life that fits you. And thanks for showing up here today. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep chasing purpose.